materials that we considered in this survey, and some abbreviations to make things, our graphs a little simpler, are listed here. We tried to get numbers on asbestos cement, cast iron, concrete, ductile iron, HDPE, PVC. Also looked for PVCO. I wanted to get an idea of how much PVC, oriented PVC was out there, and steel. Of course, there's other materials out there that don't add up to very much inventory, so anything else will be in the other category. But I think you're familiar with all those acronyms, except we're using CSC for concrete. All right, and here's the material utilization in the U.S. based on our basic survey, where you have cast iron and ductile iron, and basically at 28% of the total amount of pipe that's out there. PVC comes in third with 22%, and then asbestos comes in fourth. If you take those four material pipes, cast, ductile iron, PVC, and asbestos cement, you represent 91% of all the installed pipe in North America. The others making up smaller percentages of that. You got steel and cast iron coming in each with about 3% of the installed length. Of course, there's lots of steel and cast iron on the large transmission lines, but overall it doesn't add up to many miles of pipe. And then HDPE and PVCO are very, very small contributors. Right now, we at this point did not continue to track HDPE and PVCO separately, because if you don't have a large database or a large number of miles of pipe material to do failure data on, your results are extremely inaccurate. So from this point forward in our report, those two pipe types are moved over into the other category on there. Interesting, you still have 2% of pipe is unknown. A lot of people still don't know what they got buried in the ground 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Records still need to be updated on that. All right. Here is a report, or excuse me, a graph that's not in your report. I just something I stirred up before I came. This is just that distribution of different materials, but looking at the detailed survey results and the basic survey results. They should say the same. Those bars should be identical, but the basic survey had over twice as much coverage in miles of pipe as the detailed. Remember, this is the same database. The detailed survey is a subset of the basic survey. And the basic survey showed, I think it's 17% of the pipe is, the detailed survey says 17% of the pipe is asbestos cement, and whereas the detailed says it's 12. What I'm trying to bring out here is size of coverage matters. To use a vernacular, size matters. You've got to have a lot of numbers in your survey. The more you get, the more accurate it is. Surveys are not exact. These numbers are approximate. Getting a good size response is very, very important on there. But also, if you're looking at some of our detailed survey results, knowing that because we had a lot of people in California respond, we got a little more asbestos cement allocated to the detailed survey than would be a typical database. And I know this is going to be hard for you guys to read, but again, you got the copies. Here's the material distribution per region. And great disparity between the regions on what kind of type materials they use. I guess we're kind of like Europe, sort of. Each state's got their own way of doing things. But if you look at that, cast iron and ductile iron dominate regions 1, 4, 6, 7, and 8. They are the big players on there. And PVC, it has a significant role in regions 2, 3, 5, and 9. Okay, it plays in there. The one thing that region 2, again, that's primarily California, because Hawaii and Nevada don't play too much in there. It has a majority of asbestos cement. It's the one unique aspect of that region is having very high amount of asbestos cement. And I've had a number of contacts from people in that area wanting to see this report because they're looking to get rid of a lot of asbestos cement pipe in the near future on there. So this regional distribution, why are the regions different? And it's because, well, they're replacing the pipe with what they had in before, and nobody wants to take change, or everything Zorn said plays again here. We don't want to take risks. We know what we've used. We don't want to change. All right, how old is the pipe? Well, we broke it into 4 different categories to make it simple on there, but what we're seeing is roughly 11% of the pipe that's out there is less than 10 years old, but 28% is over 50 years. Now, that 50-year mark is important because that's where we start having a large number of failures of pipe, is pipe that starts hitting 50 years. That's where you got your measure. And that's another reason why, including newer pipes like HDPE and PVC all, haven't had the history to justify saying what their durability is. Could be very good, but you know, it's kind of like Zorn was saying. We've got 50 years of PVC, but they don't trust you for 100. You've got to have some data out there to show that. Now, here is kind of a distribution of that age information, pipe age information, into these categories, but by pipe type. And what's important here is that for a pipe that's over 50 years old, 82% of it is cast iron. Cast iron makes up 82%, or 82% of the, excuse me, I said that wrong. 82% of cast iron pipe that's out there is over 50 years old. And the rest of it is between 20 and 50 years old. You got 7% of the asbestos cement that's over 50 years old. Okay. Another interesting aspect of here is you look at the 0 to 10 years, and you got different types, but we're getting pipe installed in that region. It's better to look at this plot. This plot is the same data, but the percentages are for the total installed length. So 20% of all the installed pipe that's out there today is cast iron, and it's over 50 years old. Okay, 20%. It's a big chunk of that that's of that age. And then we have on the other end, the 0 to 10 years, we got 2 bars out there, each at about 5% for ductile iron and PVC. So giving you roughly 10% of the pipe that's out there is one of those 2 that's been installed in the last 10 years. Now that might make you think, wow, 10% of our pipe is less than 10 years old. But keep in mind, that's not just replacement rate, that's new installations, new pipe put in for subdivisions that's being developed. That's not a replacement rate. We don't have a replacement rate of 1% per year. We're less than that, and that's coming up as an important point of this study. All right, pipe size. This is not news to you guys. You know this because you're making pipe. 67% of all pipe is 8-inch and less in diameter. That's what goes out the door of your manufacturing plants. And 18%, 10 to 18. That regardless of material type, that's what's out in the field right now. Very small numbers for the bigger diameter pipes. All right, here is a size and material distribution. And this is significant because we're going to be looking at replacing ductile iron and cast iron or asbestos cement pipes. Those are the two materials that is going to need to be replaced. And this chart is going to show you that, 79% of the AC and 77% of the cast iron is less than 8 inches in diameter. That's what a market that you guys are going to be able to look at and compete for in replacing that old pipe material, primarily in that smaller diameter that you see go up. Obviously, on the higher diameter, what's out there? Cast iron and steel pipe, primarily, that's bigger than 48 inch. That they dominate in the larger diameter. So that might be some of interest to your marketing people on those distributions. This is just the same data, but written or established as a percentage of the totals. In the 3 to 8 inch range, we got 19% of the total pipe out there are cast iron and 13 is asbestos cement. Another way of looking at the data and getting some ideas that are where the smaller diameters are utilized. Pressure and demand. We did pressure as for average operating pressures in our 2012 survey, and we did it again, and it was interesting. Our average number turned out 69 psi. From 2012 was 77. It appears that utilities have somewhat reduced pressure. A lot of possible reasons for that, but your design, your pressure rating of your pipe is well above either one of those numbers. The expected life of PVC and a properly designed pipe is going to be hundreds of years at those operating pressures. Not 100, hundreds, because you're so well below the operating pressure. So many people in the legal profession think because a pipe is rated to 110 psi, that's what they run at all the time. Not true. They operate well below that for good conservative reasons on there. A new thing we did in this survey is trying to get what kind of flow rates, what kind of demands a utility is going to be looking for. And again, for designers, this is pretty important. Average demand is 137 gallons per day per person. And the peak demand is 251. Again, if you're deciding a system, those two parameters would be important to kind of see if you're kind of within what typical numbers are for flow rates for a given system. Hopefully that makes sense. Oh, and I skipped the maximum pressure, 119 psi on average. All right. Everybody might have a little bit different definition of what we call a water main break. We spelled her out from the beginning. We did the exact same definition we used in 2012, and that is where leakage was detected and repairs were made, but we asked the respondents not to report due to joint leakage, construction damage, or tapping of service lines. Now, joint leakage, well, that's a problem. That's leakage. Repairs need to be made, but we didn't feel that reflected on the longevity of a pipe material. Regardless of what its material was, that's a joint problem. Construction damage, obviously, that has nothing to do. I know the ductile iron folks say the study is garbage because of what we asked for them to report here, okay? But I'm here to tell you that I refute that entirely. The joint leakage is a very small issue, as you're well aware on there, and why you'd say construction damage has anything to do with the longevity of a pipe is ridiculous, okay? So I think their complaints are without merit. And then the way we get breaks rates is just we add all the miles of pipe together for a given pipe material and divide that into the number of breaks. There's a lot of ways you can compile that data, but that simple method doesn't bias you toward large or small utilities. We're looking for mid-range, what is it overall average? I know that's kind of hard for you to read, but there's our summary of our data. In the column here is the 2018 break rates for each one of those materials. Here's our break rates in 2012. Here's the change in break rates between those two surveys. And one thing that's really important to point out, overall, we went from 11 breaks per 100 miles per year in 2012 to 14 breaks per 100 mile per year. Overall, break rates went up 27%. Now, a lot of people think with this ASPE survey that said, we went from a D- grade on water infrastructure to a D, things are getting better. I beg to differ. We are not getting better, we are getting worse. Water main failures are not going to improve in the near term, not at all. We're looking at increases here overall. Now, our break rates, if you compare with others out in the literature, some are twice as high. We're saying 14 right now. I've seen estimates of 25 breaks per 100 miles a year. Well, I think they didn't include enough people in their survey. Okay, I'll stand by these numbers as being most accurate. You got to have a lot of data to get, if you're going to represent overall what's happening on there. Here is your wonderful chart that will show to lots of people of the break rates of the different types of the material. You've got cast iron there at 34.8 breaks per 100 miles per year. Highest break rate material, followed by AC, asbestos cement. Of course, the other categories got a lot more in there, but we don't know who to attribute that necessarily to. But it's a lot of old pipes that are in there. Of those pipe materials, that's a part of our survey, PVC again ends up with the lowest break rate material of those covered. And for much of your enjoyment, it's 2.5 times lower, or ductile iron is 2.5 or 2.4 times higher break rate than PVC. What's out there now? All right, I've mentioned this already. Break rate data has considerable scatter. It's interesting to look at the data as it comes in, and numbers are bouncing up and down and all around depending as you put people in, but as you develop enough participants in the survey, your average values stabilize. They quit bouncing around, and getting a large number of participants was really important. We really hit the mark on this survey doing that. So getting a large amount of pipe is important, and therefore trying to track what was happening in HDPE or PVC would be meaningless at this point because there's so little pipe in the U.S. to do that accurately. So we have a lot of AC, CI, DI, PVC pipe. That's our primary, that represents 91% of the pipe that's installed. Our numbers for break rates for those pipe are quite accurate. Our numbers for break rates for steel and concrete, remember, those are each only 3% of the total installed length of pipe in the US. Those numbers are not as good. They are not as, there's not enough data to say we've got those accurately represented in our survey. And here, what we're doing is comparing the 2012 and the 2018 break rate results. And what you can see there is AC went up, cast iron went way up, concrete and steel went down. Did concrete and steel improve? No. We got a lot more concrete and steel pipe in this 2018 survey. I believe those numbers are more accurate, but they're not. I don't believe that's improved pipe performance. It's this problem of getting good data. If you only have a small number of pipe, they show an improvement that's not real. I believe that we just got better numbers on them this time. Interesting. Ductile iron there went from 4.9 to 5.5 in yield shear. Yay, they went up. And PVC went down 2.3 versus 2.6 in the previous survey. We went down, they went up. In my point of view, those numbers are not different. Is the old problem of reading too many digits into a result. We really are about 1 digit accuracy in the survey, but the point is they came in basically the same. We have a large amount of PVC, we have a large amount of ductile iron, and those numbers didn't really move. That means my results were good, because they shouldn't have changed remarkably between the two surveys. But what does that highlight? What that highlights, guys, is this guy. Cast iron is going through the roof, break-wise. AC, the asbestos cement, likewise. Both of them over a 40% increase in break rates in the past 6 years. That's why I'm going to say things are not better. They're going to get worse. Now, there are people, there's literature out there you can look up. I got the references to that say break rates for an existing pipe tend to go up exponentially. I don't have any numbers on that graph. I don't know. I've got 2 data points, if you will. All we can draw is this linear extrapolation on there. But if we went up 40% in 6 years, they could go up even more coming in the future. So again, it doesn't look good. Here, I think is an extremely significant conclusion I did on this survey, where we took the miles of pipe and we broke it into just 3 size categories, where we had utilities that are under 200 miles of total pipe, 200 to 1,000 and over 1,000. So large, medium, and small. And looking at the break rates of the different materials based on that utility size. And you can look at each one of the materials. There's a steady trend here that smaller utilities are having the majority of the problems. The break rates from small utilities are driving the needle. Now, I know there's some large cities that have some horrible systems, but that's political more than anything else. The problem is our small utilities need help. That is, this is a message if the government's going to step in and help, that help ought to be focused to small utilities and not large ones, because they're the ones. A few of my respondents were from what they called as titles road supervisor. They subcontract everything out. They really don't have any expertise in-house about buried pipe. Those are the guys that need more expertise on how to get that pipe installed correctly in the ground. So even with PVC that you can see on that chart, it drops for the large utilities break rates down to 1.9. Why is it better? Why is it worse in the small utilities? Well, I'll tell you why. They're putting the ground wrong. They're not following proper installation procedures, and what you have is contractors sticking in the ground as fast as they can to improve their bottom line financially. If we take a little more care, and if we pay for someone to inspect that work, which a small utility is not going to do, it can make a tremendous difference on the longevity of that pipe. Break rates by region, they're all over the place with different regions, and what correlation you can make is, well, of course, those regions with a lot of cast iron and ductile iron have the highest break rates, ha ha ha. Okay, that's what you can track on that, and some regions have lower break rates. US and Canada is always fun to compare. The different break rates, and if you look at the cast iron in Canada, it's worse case, it's in worse situation than the US. But then they have tend to have highly corrosive soils there that can aggravate that situation. And the other important thing is over here, why is it the Canadians can do a better job installing pipe than us in the US, all right? We've got to have those vests. We need you to come and train us on how this is supposed to be done on here. It's all due to installation. I know that is what the issues are. Our break rates could be considerably lower for PVC for better installed pipe. All right, another really busy eye chart for you to try to figure out, and this is probably misused as much as it's used, but what we're looking at is from the basic survey, we tried to get them to tell us what decade the pipe was installed that was breaking. So if they had a report of a break, and somebody breaks, what decade was that pipe installed in? Some didn't know, so we disregarded those from the survey and trying to say, all right, where are most pipe breaks occurring? Well, this is complicated. A lot of them are kind of, well, steel is a very nice bell-shaped curve. Asbestos cement is an outlier here. Asbestos cement, the oldest pipe is failing, most. That's where the failures are. You might say, well, that should be the case. But in general, no, because there's usually less of the oldest pipe installed. So it's really kind of complex as to what's going to fail most often. If you look at cast iron here, it's the flattest of all, okay? Those distributions. So I don't know, quite simply, I'm not sure what to do with this chart, but it's of interest because it's hard to digest. For a given utility, they can dig into this better where they have pipe installed at the same time. They can track a little better, trying to decide what pipe do they need to replace first. Another change that occurred from the 2012 versus this survey is the PVC pipe. PVC in our 2012 survey predominantly was failing early because of poor installations. It's moved to where this survey we're kind of in the middle where the peak number of failures are. Why? I don't know why. Like I say, this chart will be misused more than it's used. It's complicated on there, but it is of interest to look at anyway. All right, common failure modes. These are just reports from the detailed survey. What is the most common failure mode? Most users reported circular crack, and what does that happen in? Cast iron and AC pipe, that's circumferential crack is the most common failure mode, so clearly that would be what would be expected given what we see on those failure rates. Now here's a little twist that we threw in on this survey that is, I think, kind of a new thing. To say that a highly corrosive soil would influence your break rate. I think most people might agree with that, except for the DI people. But so I tried to quantify that. And what you have, the USDA has a website where they've gone in and quantified in certain regions what kind of soil you have into 3 categories. You can have green, yellow, or red for low, moderate, or high soil corrosivity. Now, and they don't have it for everywhere, but where they do, we could get some idea of the relative corrosive nature of the soil. It's not a precise measure. They come right off. This is for unprotected steel in the soil, but it's the best numbers I've got. And let's take a look at this. Here's a city in California I took a look at. I ballparked what the boundaries of that city were, and through that website, and then I screen captured this image that has different region. It's got your red, which is high. It's got your yellow, which is moderate corrosivity, and your green. It even has some areas that are gray, which they don't have data in that region. Okay. And simply put, I wrote a little program to count pixels. If the pixel was green, I assigned it a value of 1. If it was moderate, I assigned it a 2. And if it was red, I assigned it a value of 3, counted up the pixels, and averaged. What do I get for that particular city is what I called a corrosion index of 2.1. Slightly above moderate corrosion risk grade. Okay, I repeated that for 280 cities. Not all cities. Some cities have little or no corrosion data from that website, so I couldn't do all of them, but I did as many as I could on there. All right. Here's kind of the distribution of the numbers of respondents in each one of these corrosion index categories. I came up with these categories, 1 to 2.9 if you have a corrosion index in that range, and most cities don't on the low side. And then we got our high side here, and I can't even read that number, but most of the cities have a very high corrosion index. The average corrosion index for the 280 cities I looked at was 2.4. That's pretty well right between moderate and high corrosive soil. All right, when people, the number of places with low corrosion soil are far and few in between. Most cities, I think the worst state is Texas. It's a red state. All right, that was a political joke there. Okay. So I was able to break things down in these different corrosion index indices, if you will, to kind of compile them together. And so here's some numbers. What I did is we got break rates for cast iron that had that low low corrosion index up through the high and the break rates. So here's cast iron, here's ductile iron break rates from those different corrosion index ranges, right? And all right, let's plot those out. Let's plot out break rates versus my corrosion index that I made up and fit a linear regression on there. So I got a little curve fit up here with pretty darn good correlation coefficient. Correlation coefficient 0 if you have no correlation, and 1 if you have perfect correlation. We're getting 0.8s or better. There's a good correlation here. And then if I look at where that line intercepts 1 and what the break rate is for intercepting 3, and compare those, I find that cast iron pipe has 20 times the break rate in a high corrosion soil than it does in a low corrosion soil. Now if you talk to people, they say corrosion doesn't affect failure of cast iron. It stops corroding and that's it. I beg to differ. I have a correlation here that, all right, the final failure may be because of a ground shift, but it was greatly weakened by the corrosion that occurred, right? corrosion does have an effect. If we look at ductile iron, we're seeing a factor of 10 between a low corrosion index soil and a high corrosion index soil. I forecast there'll be a lot of cities that read this report going and take a look at their own corrosion index. They kind of look at that. Smart cities, Logan that I come from, they like their ductile iron. But they got smart enough to know on the west side of town, they use PVC. The ductile iron won't last. And you definitely, wise sense to put plastic pipe in a high corrosion risk soil. That only makes sense, and you ought to be able to sell that idea very well, and some numbers to back that up. So I think that's kind of the new result. All right, pipe replacement. We asked respondents if they had a break rate target when they know, okay, I got to go and replace pipe. And only 21% say they had one, because it's kind of hard to pick a number, because there's a lot of factors in there, like when you have critical services. But most of them responded, well, we wait till we're reconstructing the road, and then we'll think about whether we're going to replace the pipe, which is kind of the timing. So there's a lot of, it's complicated when the city's going to decide to replace water mains. And a lot of cities are doing some kind of condition assessment, especially on their ductile iron, steel, metal type pipes. Different condition assessment approaches that they need to. So that's becoming more proactive. Only 58% of respondents are regularly replacing pipe. That is every year they got a program to replace pipe. Well, okay, what are the rest doing? Well, they're doing it when they can, but they don't have a regular program of replacing pipe. And here's a critical issue. Of those that responded to the survey, how much pipe is getting replaced? Of the respondents, it was 0.8% of their installed length. It was the average value. Why is that a concern? That translates to a 125-year replacement schedule. Why is that a concern? Your pipes don't last 125 years. You cannot have that low of a replacement rate. Are things getting better? No! The replacement rate needs to go up in the United States. That's a huge red flag. Good flag to you guys. You're going to have the opportunity to sell pipe if we can get that message across. That replacement rates need to go up to at least 100-year or replacement schedule, replacing 1% of their pipe. Remember, we looked at that differently, where it looked like we were putting 1% of the pipe in, but some of that's new subdivisions and whatnot. We're really only replacing 0.8%. So that's a concern. And 16% of the water mains out there, according to the survey, are beyond their use for life, but they lack funds to replace them. And that's up from 8% in 2012. Are we getting better? No, we're getting worse. We are not improving. Typical age of failures. We asked that on the 2012 in this survey. What we got is an average, and this is not a scientific measure. This is off the cuff. What's the typical age of a failing water main? The average came out 50 years. In 2012 was 47. And then asked them how long they expect a new pipe they're putting in to last. What do they expect it? We got 84 years this year. Previously it was, in 2012 it was 79. Yes, there's slight uptick on both those, but these are qualitative kinds of questions, no numerical based. In our unhumble opinion, the needle has not moved. Those numbers are basically the same. We're still in that same mode of failures. And typical age of a failing water main, 50 years. How much of our pipe is over 50 years? I think that's a very important fact of what we have to look forward to in terms of water main failures. Construction-related failures. We asked detailed surveys say if you were doing construction and had a failure, report what type of material. Two most common materials is ductile iron and PVC. And guess what? About the same rate of occurrence. I know Dr. Lyon has been saying we don't have near the construction-related failures as PVC. Not true. It's a fraction of a percent difference, okay? There's some argument to that issue. We asked for an estimate of their water leakage rate. Water leakage, I think, is a really important criterion that utilities should be using more of. And the average leakage rate is money going down the drain because that treated water leaked out. The average value is 10%. However, a lot of these utilities, especially the low ones, the small ones, don't have a detailed leakage survey done. They may be, you've got losses due to firefighting or unbilled consumption that are legitimate, that's probably included in that 10%. But I thought let's try and correlate what we're seeing in terms of water loss rates. There's some guys 50%, right? I don't know what's up with that. With break rates, okay, and the correlation is basically zero. But there is a trend that I can see. If you have a lot of leakage, you're going to have a lot of breaks in there. But I attribute the poor correlation to inaccurate numbers for their leakage rate, because surely there is some kind of better correlation. You had more accurate data on leakage rates. And allowed pipe materials. Bruce already showed you this one, so I got not much to add here other than PVC has gone up in acceptance from our 2012 survey. 74% of utilities responding to the survey allow PVC to be installed. 26% is still on your radar for proselyting a conversion to allowing that to be installed in those locations. But the uptick is good. And concrete's going down. Concrete is losing favor other than in large diameters. Smaller diameters, very, very little outlook on that. A very busy little figure here that you can probably look over what better in your report. Looking at different replacement methods. We did this in 2012 a while, where pipe relining, pipe bursting, directional drilling, and open cut. Directional drilling has picked up a lot of popularity. Everybody that has done that will do it again, and they like it. But particularly for where you've got to go under a river or it's a congested neighborhood. But the universal result is it's expensive. I only do it when I have to, when I don't have an alternative. Open cut remains the method of choice of replacing or installing new water mains. So it's still the predominant approach. So directional drilling is picking up on its utilization. The report has a section on asset management that try to get some people thinking beyond just the numbers on what to do, and when they're looking at replacing pipe. And number one, you've got to have a good database to make things work well. You ought to be tracking what's going on, and I got this out of the U.S. Conference of Mayors report. Avoid past bad practices. The conventional approach to water main replacement decision making has been to merely replace the pipe with roughly the same product regardless of price and based on manufacturer's recommendations. That's the thinking that in Europe, in the United States, needs to be changed. We need to advocate for people to do life cycle cost analysis, life cycle assessment for environmental concerns, an open procurement that's transparent to everybody, and clearly choosing a pipe with a long life that costs less is the best decision. And how you can justify that to people who pay their water rates would be very difficult. So making that transparent is very, very important. I'm not going to go through all those. There's a lot of stuff in that report. It's thick, okay? So I've got a lot of bullets there. For this group, I'll just go with this one. Woohoo! PVC, once again, came in with the low freight rate of the pipe materials under consideration. Once again, a great thing. Now, it's not on in your report. I uploaded this to a website through the university that tracks downloads of that report. It's kind of interesting. I got 32 downloads from China. And these numbers are per this morning, okay? 32 downloads from China. China's very interested in what's going on. 523 downloads of that report. Kind of fascinating thing here. Here's kind of a view of what's going on in the United States regionally. So, you know, they didn't all come from me sitting in Utah downloading them all the time. No. I only did it 4 times to make sure it worked, okay? I confess, 4. But it's getting in there. And a part of this, getting this report out that's been phenomenal to me, is attributable to Bruce and his database. Right over here is really the news release. This is the date where we let it out. That was a week and a half ago. And downloads coming, and then Bruce, this right here is where you started to send out notifications, right? How clarify that for me.
Basically, we have, as I mentioned, we have 70,000 contacts, municipal, engineering, other stakeholders, but the core of it is municipal. The database person sends it out, he's going to send that out over a week. Because if you send it out all at once, it gets notified as spam. So there's a technique to that. So we've got it out to about a third of the database. So you see the uptake Monday and Tuesday, and then it's going to continue growing this week. In fact, Jackie just told me since this was done this morning with Dr. Folkman, we've added another 100 to today. And so we expect that to get a lot more, get a lot higher as the weeks go on, because a lot of people, they'll open up their email right away, but then they'll wait a few days to open it up, etc. So you can see the direct uptake because we put it through the database. You should have all received that email. And basically the email says, there's this new report, it's good for asset management, there's a title asset management, so we'd love to put, PVC's the best, but you know what, people aren't going to open it up if they see it that way. So we put a low-key title that people will open the email, and then we just repeated the press release in the broadcast email I sent. And so that's where you get the uptake there.
Without Bruce's efforts on this, I have at least 4 downloads, maybe a few more. So Bruce is doing a great job on marketing the results of this study to a large audience. Like I say, I don't think we're selling a lot of pipe in China, but it's an international audience, and that's kind of fascinating to me. And, okay, there is the website, if you want to go to, and add another click in there for that. And here's the 2012 study. There's that address if you want to go and share that with others. We are mailing copies of the report to all the survey respondents. Well, we'll be going out next week, maybe.
Correct.
And to thank them, that's the only thanks they get for participating there. And that concludes my presentation. Now you're bored stiff.
Dr. Folkman, I didn't think you could do a better study than 2012. This really is amazing. This does a world of good for not just our industry, but municipalities for budgeting. We know in Canada people are we're using the 2012 budget to allocate money for water main breaks for the coming year. So it's becoming a tool, a budgeting tool, which goes far beyond our expectations. Here's my question. You added corrosion to the report, and your map is absolutely terrific. Do you know of a Canadian corrosion map as well?
I was gonna ask you. I Googled a little. Google would not come up with anything, but
Well, we do have one, if we get it to you. Could you do the same?
I could.
Thank you so much.
I could do that. In doing the report, I couldn't figure that out. But, you know, that was a fascinating kind of thing to me. I mean, no one would argue that high corrosion of soil increases your break rates, I don't think, but to quantify that,
Yeah.
I don't believe
This is
that's
the
ever
first
been
study
done.
that's done it, exactly.
And also to put the needle, what is, you know, most cities are between moderate and high corrosion risk soil. I don't think that has struck home probably with a lot of cities of where they're at.
Absolutely. And if I could just, one more follow-up. I noticed you were talking about the pressure, operating pressures have come down. What's your sense? Is it because there's more corrosion in the system and they're trying to reduce the break rates by putting less stress on the system? Or is there some other reason?
It's a great question, all we can do is speculate. But loss, if you got leakage, you do reduce the pressure, you reduce your leakage. It's a clear thing. Of course, you got to maintain firefighting and service capacity for different things, but less is more in terms of savings. So your guesses are as good as mine. Other questions? Yes.
Dr. Folkman, first of all, thank you very much. I think this is great. We were going to be using that certainly on the Hill as they look at water infrastructure and things like that. One question for you. You pointed out in the slide that 0.8% is the current replacement rate, and that lasts 125 years, and you said, you know, if you went to 1%, it would be 100 years. But given the current state of the water infrastructure system in the United States and how old a lot of these materials are and their failure rate, what is the ideal replacement rate? Should it be more like 4, 6, 7% a year?
Well, I don't have that number. I could think about that a while. I don't exactly know, but it's going to depend. You know, I don't think there's a number for the country. It's for each utility to decide. Some utilities are in great shape. Fascinating, some of the responses. You know, there's cities out there with a lot of ductile iron pipe that know how to put that in right. They have very low break rates. So we could put a number out there, but the most important number is for a city to sit down and make that decision, because that's not going to be the same number for every city.
So is this not a cause then for asset management?
Asset management is going to be the buzzword for a long time to look at, and I had help from Craig Baird on putting that report together to get some information to encourage utilities to get into that asset management mode and planning their replacements.
Thank you.
I just have something to add. Because I asked that question to Dr. Folkman, you know, about the corrosion. How do we ferret out the corrosion issues with ductile iron pipe? And what happens is the cities that were doing well, they have thicker walls. They're spending more money to have those pipes, but we couldn't really, it was difficult to quantify this in the study, so it's not reflected. You're getting this average, but just know that where they're doing better, it's much more expensive for them to have that pipe in the ground.
Good point, Christian. I should have brought that up. I mean, all pipes need to be installed properly now. All pipes. And if you're wrapping a ductile iron pipe and beating it over on it with a backhoe, I don't think that sleeve is going to do a whole lot of good. You've got to handle ductile iron with as much care as any other pipe during install. A lot of what they sell as big and tough is inappropriate, because if they want the break rates, a good break rate, which they can have, they've got to spend a lot more money on ductile iron pipe. Where you guys fit in is pipe lasts a long time and a low cost. That's where you're gonna win. And I just, my own little personal persuasion, encourage you guys to pitch and try to start selling oriented PVC. It's a niche market right now. It's a harder sell, but nobody will touch you on price. Nobody will touch you once you got the production lines up and running. The cost will, you will conquer that market. Is it easy to sell a pipe that's flexible? No, it's not. It's going to take a lot of time to do that. And, you know, if you get a couple of test cities to kind of prove that out, it would probably be well for you as an industry. That's personal persuasion here. Take a cue from Europe.
Can I ask you on, you know, the PVCO component was so low, 0.05%, I think it said. And I think HDPE was 0.5%. So was most of that HDPE in no-dig applications? Or was there any that you sensed were in open trench?
I can't quantify that because it wasn't brought out in the survey on there. I can anecdotally comment though that, you know, they're having failure rates, but they're on the HDPE, but they are all weld issues. It's a new industry, new people, training, and they have installations where the pipe joining problems fail later on, so they have a lot of infant pipe mortality with the HDPE. I can tell you that. What were they doing with it? I'm not sure, but it is the predominant way of doing directional drilling.
I got a question for you. If low price is the keys to the kingdom, why don't we already own it? Because we already have a much lower
Well,
price
you
product
bring
than
a good argument to the table. It's selling that long life at a low cost, and I can see, you're right, why don't we already own that?
So even lower cost, I don't necessarily think is the key to it, it's performance.
I'm thinking long term. PVCO is not going to be, it's going to be a bit player for some time to come, but you guys have HDPE biting at your heels. I seen a big length of it driving between the keys the other day. It's everywhere, and if you want to be competitive with HDPE, you can beat them thoroughly on price with PVCO.
You can beat it with standard stuff too.
That's right. And also its resistance to surge is much better. So where a lot of HDPE is marketed is for force mains, right? They've done a good job in saying we're a better choice than PVC on force main. And if you did PVCO there, it would a lot of their criticisms evaporate. So it's long term. It's long term. I was going to say it's a better product. It's a better product. It just takes more care and installation. I understand. The businessman says we're good enough right now, and I understand. Other questions? I've well used my time. I'm sorry.